Telltale Guys, Flood Myths.
What's your ETA? We'll be there in 2 minutes. Come on, we have lives to save here.
Yes, it is raining applause, just like will be raining in our topic today. Hi, guys. Again, this is Telltale Guys. I am Zane, and I am with also my host, Josh.
That's me.
How's it going? Yep, it's you. What's going on? You're still stuck in your sad little trash corner.
Still sad here, but the good news is the reno is pretty much done. The bad news is that I had a custom table getting made for my desk, for my new office space. But then today the person making is like, sorry, we can't make it because we're having problems trying to figure out how to make it well. I was like, what? Like, why are you just telling me this now? And it's like, wait, I still want a table. Can we modify what I want so it can still happen? And they're like, oh yeah, I guess we could do that. I'm like, do you not want money? Like, what is this? People
Carpenters aren't the same compared to the biblical ones that we knew about that we will possibly refer to in the story.
Much better carpenters back in the day, I suppose. And also like the Titanic, those wooden doors were made sturdy and well, they could only hold one person, I guess.
Yeah, not sturdy enough, it would seem, but I guess it's not necessarily how sturdy the wood door was. It's just balancing, I guess. I don't know.
It just means it's just a matter how selfish the person on the door is, not letting you on.
I remember when I saw Titanic for the first time, and when she basically lets Jack go. Spoiler alert if you guys haven't seen Titanic.
It goes down.
Yeah, but when she lets go of his hand, it was like, I guess, kind of frozen.
Yeah.
And so it made kind of a sound like, and like, I kind of like laughed out loud because I didn't expect it. And like, it was quiet because everyone is into this dramatic scene. And I felt like
all the girls are crying and you're like,
Did
your date slap you or?
I was with my family. So,
okay. All right.
Yeah.
I guess you get a pass.
Yeah. Also, I didn't expect there to be like nudity and those type of scenes in there. So I was like, at that age, I was like, oh God, whoops, oh no.
Oh my God.
A lot of awkwardness happening during my viewing.
You're like, icebergs indeed. Yes.
Let's see. On my end, I'm actually, today's kind of an exciting day. I'm about to go on paternity leave. We're expecting another girl, and we're both very excited. So it'll be gonna. Oh
yes.
Appreciate it. So very happy, but we're all tired and we're all ready to meet our baby girl. So that's where I am right now.
Well, congratulations. And the good news is, as tired as you are now, I hear it only gets less tired once the baby's delivered. So
yeah,
you'll be good.
It's going to be a flood of delirium. So
yes. Oh,
okay.
Nice.
It'll be a welcome flood of tiredness.
Okay. I like the transition there. Very smooth. Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of floods, Zane, that's what we're going to talk about today. And, it's all about the water, the water today. We're diving into flood myths. Myths is in plural. Yes, you heard that right. Not just the one that most people are familiar about. Noah's Ark, I assume, is traditionally what most people know from the Bible, of course, and also core in Judaism and Islam. But I think many people might be surprised that there's actually hundreds of flood myths around the world.
Wow.
And I'm not just talking about your average, like, oh, it rained a lot, or there was a hurricane and it flooded a little bit, like big world-ending flood myths. Like these are events that really left a mark on people.
Like extinction level myths, or essentially.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, they were catastrophic, as far as floods go. Think of the worst flooding. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see some flooding video we have in our background here. When we have these localized floods in the United States or wherever around the world, typically these are the kinds that, they flood houses, move houses away. But floods from these flood myths, totally changed landscapes and were much larger in scale. But perhaps let me get my slides up for everybody here. Let's start with can we make this bigger? Let's see.
Kind of light to see.
Let's see. Is this? Oh no, that's Zane's face. Wait, where'd he go? There it is. There we go. I still haven't figured this one out yet.
No.
All right, so let's start with Noah's Ark, and I think this should kind of recap everybody and give them an idea of a refresher, I guess, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I? I'm having a flooding issue right now with using this thing.
Flooding of errors.
Yeah, there we go. We'll just keep it like this for now. All right, so this I'm going to use. This is Genesis 6 using the ESV version of the Bible. I know there's like a billion versions of the Bible, and everyone has their own favorites or whatever.
What does ESV stand for?
I think it's English Standard Version. I think that's what it stands for. But I just chose this one just to relay the gist of the story. So it's not meant to convey the definitive version. So don't yell at us or whatever. But let's, why should I speak about Noah's Ark? Let's just hear maybe a little bit more of a authoritative voice on it.
As humanity multiplied and became corrupt, the sons of God saw the daughters of man and took them as wives, leading to the birth of the Nephilim, mighty men of renown. God observed the widespread wickedness of mankind, and it grieved him deeply. He decided to reduce humanity's lifespan to 120 years, and planned to destroy all life on earth with a great flood, regretting that he had created man. However, Noah found favor with God, who chose him to survive the impending catastrophe, and instructed him to build an ark to preserve his family and the animals. God gave Noah specific instructions on how to build the ark and how to gather the animals, 2 of every kind, male and female, as well as 7 pairs of clean animals. After Noah completed the ark, God commanded him to enter with his family, and in 7 days he would send a flood to destroy all life. When the flood began, rain fell for 40 days and nights, and the waters rose, covering the earth, including the highest mountains. All life on land perished, but Noah and those with him in the ark were spared. The flood waters prevailed for 150 days, wiping out every living thing except Noah and his family.
All right.
Epic sounding, booming voice.
Yeah, it's like it's nice to have a main line to somebody who was like there, I guess.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how we remember the flood myth, right, Zane? No curveballs there for you.
Right. Well, what was with the giant Sauron eye during
that was the eye of God.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. God. I mean, it's a little bit, what I imagined it would be.
I guess like on the back of the dollar bill or whatever, like Illuminati eye or whatever.
All-seeing eye in the
all-seeing
cloud.
eye. Got it.
Yeah. Okay, so man grew wicked, and God said, I'm just going to destroy everything because it's just a hot mess down here. But I'll spare this guy named Noah, have him build a ship, fill it with animals, yada yada, save his family, and then he's done with everything. All right, so then it I think actually in the Bible, the Hebrew word is that it precipitated for about a month. It wasn't like it rained; it's precipitated, which could mean a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
But then the flood waters came, covered the land, and the mountains, and lasted a long time, and just like we remembered. Okay, so let's talk about another myth from another part of the world. Was the Noah story based off an even older account from Mesopotamia? We remember Mesopotamia from previous years, I think, or previous episodes. This is the Epic of Gilgamesh, Zane. I think, have you heard of this thing?
I have. obviously studied a bit, but it's kind of hazy on what I remember the whole epic was. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Okay, I mean, it was a lot. There was a lot of different stories in there, but a lot of people think that the Noah stories were kind of taken from the Epic of Gilgamesh because it's very similar and stuff. But of course, the Epic of Gilgamesh is a series of poems about the founding hero named Gilgamesh, and these stories are written on the clay tablets, several clay tablets, and this is about 2100 BC, something like that. That's this clay tablet here is one of the epics of Gilgamesh.
Is it kind of like the equivalent of Homer's Odyssey? This, like,
yeah. I mean, I guess you can kind of equate it like that because that was a poem as well. Epics were kind of laid out in these poems for their languages that they're easier to remember and pass along. Also the Ramayana or the Mahabharata, Mahabharata and the Ramayana in India, they're epic founding tales as well. Fascinating stories. But in this case, Gilgamesh, Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. So this accounts in the Epic of Gilgamesh a story of a man named Utnapishtim, who was the survivor of a great flood. And he saved the animals in a lifeboat that he built. And here's some, I guess, why have me say it when we can go right to the source from ancient Mesopotamia to talk about the actual Epic of Gilgamesh, this particular phase of the flood.
Privileged access.
Yes, we get all the scoops here on Telltale Guys.
In the Epic of Gilgamesh, Utnapishtim is a wise and mortal figure who tells Gilgamesh the story of a great flood that once destroyed humanity. According to Utnapishtim, the gods decided to send a flood to wipe out mankind because humans had become too noisy and disruptive. However, the god Ea, also known as Enki, warned Utnapishtim, instructing him to build a large boat to survive the impending deluge. Utnapishtim follows the divine instructions, building the boat and loading with his family, his wealth, and pairs of every animal species. When the flood comes, it lasts for several days, submerging the earth and drowning all life. Utnapishtim's boat survives, and after the water recedes, he sends out a series of birds to find dry land. Eventually the boat comes to rest on a mountain, and Utnapishtim offers a sacrifice to the gods in gratitude. As a reward for his obedience and survival, the gods grant Utnapishtim and his wife immortality, ensuring they live forever in a distant place. Utnapishtim's story serves as the warning to Gilgamesh, who seeks immortality, about the inevitability of death and the importance of accepting one's fate.
So this ancient source of knowledge and truth and light was a chipmunk.
I guess the Mesopotamian gods not quite as fearsome or not as quite as vocally gifted as the biblical ones, perhaps.
Still a very interesting version of this flood myth, especially a little different that the main character, if you will, was granted immortality. I don't think Noah got that luck.
No, although long lived in the Bible, Noah was.
That's right.
Utnapishtim is the equivalent of Noah in this flood story, and kind of more of a side character in the Gilgamesh tale because he was the last person from the old world and was given Gilgamesh, like it was saying in clues that, hey, here's how you get to be immortal. The rest of the story is interesting too, but for another time. Okay, so it goes on, and Utnapishtim was told by the god Enki, in case you couldn't hear the chipmunk god very well, to leave his world possessions and build a ship so that the sun couldn't shine through the wood. It had equal dimensions and was made in, I think, 7 days, about 200 feet long and 200 feet wide. It had 7 floors divided into 9 sections, and once everyone was in the ship, it was sealed. He was told to take his wife, some family, and some craftsmen, baby animals and grains and whatnot. Everyone not on the ship died, and after 12 days aboard the ark, Utnapishtim saw the slopes of Mount Nasir, where it rested for 7 days. And here's a map kind of giving you an idea of the area of where it happened. Let's see. Can we make this bigger? All right. There we go. So kind of in northern Iraq is this area, Nasir is where this mountain is supposedly. It's near the city of Sulaymaniyah in Iraq. I'm sure I didn't say that right at all, but I couldn't find this mountain on Google Maps by any of its names. It has several names, but here it is into relation, I guess. It's kind of hard to see probably on this map, but the south end of it, Zane, that bottom hat, that's where Utnapishtim's ark landed. Was said to land on the mountains in this area right there. And in the north, that's where Mount Ararat is. That's where Noah's ark is supposedly located at.
It's a pretty similar area, for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of in the same region there. So anyways, he sent out, a dove to see if the water was gone. A dove came back because there was nothing but water. Okay, very similar to the Noah's story here that we're familiar with. He then sent out several more birds to check. And the last one being a raven who saw the water was gone and the raven didn't return. Again, very similar, right? Then they all got off the ship, animals too, and because the gods were happy that they preserved the human race, they gave him and his wife immortality, as mentioned, and placed among the gods. So it was like, hey, you're awesome. You can kind of be like one of us with immortality. In the epic of Gilgamesh tracks down Utnapishtim because, he's immortal, and he asks him for the secret of immortality, and then is sent off to collect a plant at the bottom of the sea. So that's kind of the Mesopotamian story of the ark. What do you think of that one, Zane?
It's interesting. I mean, most interesting is how similar they are. And from what I've learned about all of these flood myths before, is that there are similarities throughout all of them. And like you said, there are like hundreds of them if you really took a deep dive.
Yeah. So I think those two are probably the most familiar to everyone. So let's go a little bit deeper here and talk about some other ones that are from different regions. So let's go to Greece. This is Deucalion in Pyrrha. Yeah, Pyrrha. And so in this story, Zeus decides to destroy humanity with a great flood due to the corruption of humanity. The people were greedy, angry, and hateful. I believe this was a result from Pandora opening her box and letting all the evils out, that story. The people were also neglecting their praying duties to the gods and, growing lax in their sacrifices too. So
it's pretty rich that Zeus was like, you guys are being terrible people. I'm going to flood you all, when Zeus was absolutely awful as well.
Well, the gods can be terrible, but the people, they have to do sacrifices and worship. And I think that's really the crux of the matter. They weren't doing those things. So then Deucalion, and he was the son of Prometheus and his wife, Pyrrha. Deucalion's wife was Pyrrha. I'm sure I'm butchering these names. But they were, by most accounts, were upstanding people. So much like the other flood myths, hey, these people, they're chosen because they're actually good and they're not awful like the rest of the people. So then, he was warned by his father that the flood was going to happen, and Prometheus was like a god type of figure. The flood was going to happen, and then Deucalion and Pyrrha decided in order to survive, that they would build a chest, a large boat, to survive the deluge. And it rained for 9 days, and no trees or mountains could be seen. And after the floodwaters receded, their boat landed on Mount Paranius. And I have here the location of where that mountain was. This was in the Peloponnese region of Greece. Zane, the Peloponnese with the fingers. I think we remember that from a story we did long ago, The Sacred Band of Thebes. But
okay.
That was a different podcast, folks. But in this one, yes, that's kind of where the mountain is. I circled it. It's a little hard to see again, but you get the idea of where it was. So the Greece one, were you familiar with any of the Greece story of that, Zane?
No, this one's kind of new to me, so it's interesting to hear.
So another little aspect of this particular story is that they repopulate the earth by throwing stones behind them, which turn into humans. I'm sure these are all like allegories or something that happened, right? But let's now go to a little bit different part of the world. This one is Manu and the Great Flood. This is in Hinduism. So in Hindu mythology, Manu is warned by the god Vishnu in the form of a fish about an impending flood that will destroy the world. And Manu builds an ark to save himself, his family, and a pair of each animal species. The boat is guided by the fish to a mountain where they survive the deluge. And on Manu's boat, there were 7 sages, kind of like founding heroes, these sages, right? But his boat landed in the Malaya Mountains, and not really known where these mountains are, but people think they are around this location in India. So this is southern India, kind of on the west coast, kind of near the tip there. So that's where this mountain, they think it was located around here. So interesting note that part of the story where the fish guides him, the fish has a horn on its head. So that to me kind of sounds like a narwhal. I don't know. Like you don't hear many fish with horns on their head, but narwhals do have that horn on their head because the fish, like I think in the story, like he lassos the fish and it kind of drags him to where it needs to go. So what would a narwhal be doing down in southern India?
And they're more northern creatures, right?
Right, they're Arctic animals. Yeah.
Arctic, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe it's not. Maybe, I mean, that's just a theory of mine. I don't know. Maybe it just sounds. I mean, I guess if there's a worldwide flood, it would throw all kinds of animals all over the place that are ocean animals, and then they just kind of
probably change up all the currents and all that. Maybe.
Yeah, change the currents up. Yeah, animals are confused or like, whatever. And the god's like, hey, here's a guy with a horn. He lasso that. That's easy. It'll drag you where you need to go. But kind of make a note. Anything on this story that kind of stands out to you on differences there or similarities?
I mean, it's interesting that obviously there's some language translation differences, but the term arc seems to be used throughout these stories. Obviously, it means it's like a big boat, but that's very intriguing to me. And also, each story has very descriptive on kind of the size and the width of the arc. So it's just these stories they're intriguingly similar, which is cool. Obviously, so I know with Noah's Ark story, he had his sons and their wives kind of on board. And then this story, there sounds to be like, 7 sages or something like that. And they were like, I guess they would help kind of lead and populate the world. I'm not sure. Is that where it goes?
Yeah, well, hold on to that thought because it's like, I think in Noah's thing, there was 8 or 9 people in total with his sons and their wives and Noah and his wife. And in this Hindu myth, there's 7 sages plus Manu and I think his family members as well. And then in the Greek one, there was only, I think, 2 people, but let's continue on to another part of the world. Oh, not there yet. All right, so let's go to China, Zane. You and the Great Flood. In Chinese legend, the flood myth is often likened to the story or linked to the story of Emperor Yu, who was tasked with controlling a great flood that ravaged the land. While the flood itself does not have a singular mythical cause, Yu's effort to tame the floodwaters are considered foundational myth for Chinese civilization, symbolizing perseverance and leadership. But I actually have a cool little story to talk about this one. I'm going to share here, and we'll just let this tell the story of it, and then we can discuss it afterward.
Around 4,200 years ago, there occurred a great flood that destroyed almost all the civilizations on Earth. The Emperor of China, in order to save his people, went to the top of Kunlun Mountain to beg for help from heaven. He was told that the flood was arranged and could only be stopped 20 years later by a person named Yu. Years passed, and one day a woman had a weird dream of a godlike man who called himself Saint Yu. He said he had a mission of controlling the flood and would soon appear on Earth as her son. 13 months later, Yu was born. When Yu was a little boy, he constantly watched his father leave home to help control the flood. One day, an old Taoist went to Yu's doorstep and told him that the flood was a worldwide disaster and that only those who can communicate with heaven and earth can deal with it. The master then taught Yu how to control the flood. He taught him to follow the nature of the water and do not fight against it. After Yu learned to control the water, he eagerly headed out to help his father to fulfill the mission of controlling the flood. When Yu found his father, he had just finished building a dike to keep the water in one place. This was a different method than what Yu's master taught him, and Yu realized that it was not following the nature of water at all. It was fighting against it. Unfortunately, the dike rose too high and collapsed. Yu's father was exiled and soon died filled with resentment. It turns out that Yu's father actually stole a power from heaven called Swelling Earth, which allowed the dike to rise. Yu was told by his father to finish the job of stopping the flood. He went to see the emperor and told him, "We must follow the nature of the water." The emperor was then reminded of the prophecy he heard 20 years ago on Kunlun Mountain. He realized that Yu was the chosen one and appointed Yu to the task of controlling the water. Yu had been married for only 4 days before he had to leave to fulfill his mission. During the years he worked on the flood, he only neared his house 3 times. Yet not once did Yu allow himself to see his family for fear of delaying his task, not even when he heard the wailings of his newborn son. Yu traveled the country to study geography, measure elevation, and mark river channels. He helped dredge riverbeds, which opened up river courses and allowed floodwaters to drain into the ocean. After 13 long years, the flood was finally under control. The emperor was so impressed with Yu that he passed the throne to him. Yu the Great went on to found the first dynasty in Chinese history, the Xia dynasty.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, so thanks to the Chen Dynasty, and that's from a YouTube channel, the Chen Dynasty. Check them out. They let us use it.
Cool.
Mikey, he does good stuff. Kind of does he does a lot of different things, but China focused on a lot of his videos. Anyways, though, this particular flood myth to me is different than the other ones. It almost seems like it has a bit of like a Paul Bunyan-esque type of flavor to it, with like how the hero goes and after the flood and opens up waterways and do stuff like that, kind of like Paul Bunyan made all the lakes in up north and stuff like that by walking through his footsteps or whatever. I don't know. What do you think about that particular flood myth?
Yeah, it was interesting because obviously the flood that occurs in China was cataclysmic, but it seems like people were kind of able to operate around it in a way. Obviously, Yu is able to, with help, kind of divert it and all that, but it doesn't seem like it's correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem like the flood is just like all water and everyone is just gone. It seems like people are kind of like living with it in a way. That's just what I got from it.
Yeah, it almost felt to me kind of like if there was a global flood, right? And it's like Noah's flood or whatever. The region of the world where he was experienced it different than say in China. Maybe they had more lowlands, or maybe the water level didn't quite get everything. It was more just it lasted a long time, kind of like videos in our background, just flooding lower level type of stuff. And it was really more a story of them surviving after the flood, as opposed to, hey, you're the last survivors and you got to repopulate everything. So, I don't know, but it could be, and I'll get into maybe a little bit later, is that maybe it's a different flood that they're talking about in China, but still a big catastrophe that's worldwide. And for them, obviously, the whole, China's huge. So, it would have affected all the land over there too in Asia. Okay, but let's go to Mesoamerica, Zane. This
Going
is
across the globe.
Yeah, go the other side of it. We all hear about the stuff over in the old world. How about the new world? Are there any flood myths over here? And yes, there are. So this is a story of Tata and Nana. So, okay, similar story again. People grew wicked, stopped worshiping the gods. The gods got angry, and Tlaloc, the rain god, decided to flood the earth and destroy it. But he liked two people, Tata, and in some accounts, I found the name was Nata. But most of it said Tata. But his wife's name was Nena. So, and he warned them. The god warned these two individuals. Said, "You need to hollow out a cypress tree trunk and some food to survive. Put it in the boat." And then the boat landed on some mountaintops. And then they had lots of kids, like 15 kids. But all the kids, they were born mute, right? And then the gods intervened and gave all the kids the ability to speak, but they all spoke a different language when they were done. So that's this is a cypress tree. So I think we're all familiar with cypress trees referenced in the Bible, and even like in America we have cypress trees. So South America, not too familiar with cypress trees down there, but this is a very large tree. In South American cypress, they have their own variety down there. So I could see that being hollowed out and two people getting in it to use it as a boat with some food in it.
But definitely not every pair of animal
No.
planets or in Mesoamerica.
Right. But that wasn't the myth, right? They didn't say all the animals. They just said, take some food and you two, you'll survive. And when you get out, you can have some kids. So that's basically what that one was. But very kind of similar there with the, the raining and the floods and the water covering everything. And then, repopulating to make humanity. I found it interesting, though, that the bit about the 15 kids being born mute and then all speaking a different language after the gods came in. So, like, I'm thinking, is that part of, like, is that okay? So if your kids were born mute, or is this an allegory for how we all got languages, kind of like the Tower of Babel, in the Bible? But maybe it's an account of maybe these two individuals did survive over here. Maybe they were related or something, and that's why all their kids are mute. Genetic defects when you only have two people trying to populate, and that was the defect that came out. And then the gods came down and said, "Hey, okay, well, you all speak different languages, so I'll teach you." And then that's how they got all the different languages over here. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it also kind of reminds me of, maybe, I don't know why they would be born mute, but maybe there needed to be a spiritual interference, kind of like with the apostles, and how the tongue of fire from Holy Spirit touched them, and they were able to speak different languages so they could spread the word of Christ. So maybe something similar to that. I don't know. Maybe that was on purpose. Like, okay, you're born mute, so we can kind of rewire you to speak different languages so the world can kind of flourish. Well,
yeah, maybe. Who's to say? I wasn't there, so
no, neither was I.
All right. So, okay, a good take on that. But let's go back to Africa now. Okay, the continent of Africa. Specifically, let's talk about the Maasai of East Africa. That's kind of like in the Kenya area. So there's a man named Tumba Knot and his wife Napende. I think that's how you say it. I'm not
great.
up on my Maasai languages.
I don't think you're up on any other language. So
yes. All right, so them two, and then their sons, they were deemed righteous, like they were good people. And then the world, again, grew. It was too populated and sinful, and they didn't mind the gods properly, so they didn't worship them. Then a murder happened, and God said he would destroy mankind except for Tumbainat and his family. And God told him to build an ark of wood and enter it with his two wives. He had two wives. I didn't have a name for the other wife in my search here, but I'm sure it's somewhere. So his 2 wives, his 6 sons, and their wives, also animals. And once inside, God caused the rain to start, and it flooded. Everyone drowned. The ship drifted for a long time. The rain stopped, and Tumbeanut sent out a dove to check the flood. Okay. It returned, just like in Noah's story. Then several days later, he sent out a vulture and attached an arrow to the tail of the vulture so that when it landed, like the arrow would get stuck on something, and then he would know that, oh, it landed on ground because the arrow came off.
Mm-hmm.
So then the vulture returned without an arrow, and Tumbeanut figured out, hey, the land's dry. The ship was grounded on the steps of that area, and they all got out. He saw 4 rainbows, one in each quarter of the sky, signifying God's wrath was over. And let's see. This is the Maasai Steppes, and this is in Africa to kind of give you an idea of what that area looks like. That's kind of an overlook there. So it's like the Tabletop Mountains area, plateau, if you will. So what say you of the African legend?
Well, just another thing that's interesting is like the use of birds in each of these tales and myths to see if land has been found or if land is there. And they're all a little bit different, except, well, I guess the Mesopotamian one and Noah pretty similar with the dove. But I think that's interesting and it makes sense.
Yeah, another thing that I found that kept popping up in a lot of these stories too is that they mentioned that the people got into the ark and then the ark was sealed. Like it was like almost like they were talking about it being closed from the outside, and they were closed inside of this thing. And then the floods happened. Like they weren't saying they closed it themselves and locked the door. They said it was sealed. Like that was a very interesting point to me. Like, what does that mean? Like, what is that for? Like God or the gods? They said they make the ships and then we'll take care of the outside of it for you so you doesn't leak and you guys don't die.
Interesting.
Like, or maybe like almost like what do you call it? Like submarines, like a hatch. Maybe it has like a closing mechanism on the outside that they had to have somebody close. That they were secure.
It was that one cousin they didn't like, and so he was forced to seal it up, and he died.
Yeah, you don't believe us, so you close this up for us. And like, okay, but then people couldn't open it. They couldn't get in, so it was like it was sealed like seamlessly almost. It seems, but that's interesting to me. So anyways, and it goes on and on, and from the Pacific Northwest to Finland to New Zealand and Oceania to North Africa, Tibet, they all got flood myths. So all these stories tell of mass destruction. A handful of people survive, repopulate the world, and you'll see in a lot of these stories or cultures in separate stories all talk of founding heroes. Oftentimes about 7 of them. I mentioned this a little bit earlier with like the number of people that are on these ships. They seem to have a similar amount of people on these arcs or whatever when the flood is done. So to me, it seems a lot of the survivors, spread out through the world and sharing their knowledge they retained from before the flood or something like that. Often, they would looked upon as great men or gods or demigods even. But that's perhaps, a different episode about demigods. But so let's just stick to the flood. I just find that interesting that they all kind of have a similar amount of people on them. And then also too, a lot of these cultures have these stories of founding heroes that started up societies or taught them how to do fire or whatever, build things. Like all these little things that you identify with human civilization is like it comes from these culture heroes,
And they would maybe some of them create like, important lines of families or something like that. Family.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, that's just an interesting sticking point to me. But so did this happen, Zane? Was there a worldwide flood? Some evidence points to yes, or at least some sort of global catastrophe. Have you ever heard of the Younger Dryas?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so this was an event that happened about 14,500 years ago, give or take 1,000 years. It was a time of abrupt change and global climate. Roughly when we started to come out of the Ice Age. Yeah, so that's when it started warming up really, really quick. So it's like something happened around this time. The climate of the world started to shift. Like it wasn't gradual. Like something boom happened. So what caused this? So some theories suggest a comet or a meteor impact. Something caused an extinction of the megafauna. Like, we used to have the woolly mammoths, the saber-toothed cats, all those really big mammals. And then they were all dead about 10,000 years ago. Like what happened to them? So some people think this comet or meteor impact caused extinction of megafauna and other cultures from around the world. So it's possible this comet maybe hit a polar ice cap, which could have caused flooding and made the sea levels rise. So you figure something like a giant thing hitting an ice cap would melt things, right? But perhaps something else happened. A supernova, could melt ice caps if it was within a few 100,000 light years of Earth. A supernova is when a star explodes or whatever. Kind of interesting, maybe. I don't know. But let's not overlook the global flood that might produce or I guess an issue that a global flood would create. So just say, okay, this happened, something happened, there was a global flood. It would produce what is called a genetic bottleneck. And that's when the population drops significantly, which leads to a great reduction in genetic diversity. So this is, let's see.
I don't know if you're going to touch on this either, but I mean, it could also be more of a Earthside, what if we just had some major geological volcanic activity that melted and melted ice or caused a big global warming event? That's something to consider too.
Sure. Yeah, I don't, but save that for theories at the end there. We'll talk about that. So what am I saying here? This is okay, let's make this a little bigger. It's kind of hard to see. But famously, cheetahs have gone through several bottlenecks throughout history. So about 11,000 years ago, they think there were as few as 7 cheetahs remaining in Africa. So their population went down to 7. And interestingly, 7, that 7 number again, kind of interesting with like the founding heroes. Cheetahs had that 7 founding hero. I don't know. It's kind of a little aside there, but so yeah, similar to that in many stories. But then around the time of the Younger Dryas event, but also they had a bottleneck around 100,000 years ago. So the most recent bottleneck around 11,000 years ago is around that Younger Dryas time for the cheetahs. But then they also had a bottleneck 100,000 years ago. So my thinking is, well, could the 100,000 years ago flood, could that flood maybe be, or could that mean that these global flood myths are much older than the Younger Dryas? Because humans have been around longer than that. So maybe that's a thing. Well, it turns out that humans have had a genetic bottleneck, Zane, and then that bottleneck occurred around, or a significant bottleneck occurred around 930,000 to 800,000 years ago, roughly, to a point where we could have been down to only like 1,000 individuals. So here's a kind of showing you a bottleneck here, what happens with the human population. Boom, 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 collapse, but not quite low enough for an extinction, but almost there, very significant. And then it takes a long time to recover. So, but to a point, humans and many animals, for that fact, have gone through varying sizes of bottlenecks throughout the ages. Populations were small, grew bigger, then collapsed to near threatening sizes or levels before they were able to stabilize and grow again. This here is a map. Make it a little bigger here. This is kind of showing like a population of Europe, like Europeans and stuff like that, where they were kind of descended down from these couple of pockets of people that mixed kind of in Europe, but it went down very small and then of course grew back up to where we are now. But it was kind of showing that the populations got down to just a few surviving pockets of people in different locations, and they're showing these locations kind of in these regions where these flood myths are happening, right? The Noahs and the other ones from around the world as well. I didn't get into all of them because there's just too many to point out. So what of these flood myths then? When did they happen? It's hard to say. But flood myths are indeed very common and widespread. So that leads me to believe either there was massive flooding that affected a small group of people that survived somewhere, and after the floods, they spread out across the globe and carried these stories with them. So, like if you subscribe to the Noah's Ark theory, that Noah and his family, those were the only survivors, and everyone else died. And then that small group of people spread out all over the planet. And that's how all these other flood myths came to be. Or maybe, like as today, many people live near water. So water lines, lakes, shorelines, whatever. So a rise in global sea levels over a short period of time would be devastating to populations. And this is reflected by many underwater cities and stories of lost cities and continents. So many cultures retain these stories in their geographic locations and then pass them down. So many survivors across the globe, but very small populations from all over the planet. So a global event happened. It wasn't just one person that survived. It was Noah. It was Upnapishtim. It was Tata and Nena, etc. It was all these people in different locations because their groups of people lived near the coastline or rivers and lakes that flooded and devastated where everyone was living. So, either way, you have stories of destruction, survival, and repopulating and founding civilizations all over again. It's possible that this event happened in the near past or a very far past, or it happened many times and it's just like kind of all conglomerated into like one cultural memory of some event happening. So that's kind of like where I'm at for these flood myths. What do you think, or some theories you think I might have left out or pertain to?
I think my feeling on it is, I'm not exactly sure if there was like one gigantic event that happened that wiped out all of these different civilizations and left only a few people alive. I think there could have been like these localized weather events that happened and it kind of took over these regions because they were near water, like you said. And also to these cultures, their whole world was just like their localized culture. So they thought, when they're flooded, the whole world is flooded because at this point, at least far back, they weren't traveling a ridiculous amount of miles around the world. They kind of were maybe around the Mediterranean, but I could see, in near where Noah was or Mesopotamia, like if there was some sort of flooding event that they would think, oh, well, the whole world is gone. So that's my take on it. It's all kind of localized.
So you don't subscribe to a global type of event like the Younger Dryas comet impact theory or something like that?
I don't know. And I don't know about a comet because if there was a huge comet or asteroid, if that hits, there's also going to be, besides flooding, there's going to be atmospheric issues that happen and a lot of crap goes in the air and that causes very, very harsh mass extinction.
Well, yes and no. So I think like the theory of it hitting an ice cap, like it's not hitting the ground and dirt. So it's not kicking all that dust up into the air. It's just hitting ice and melting it. So, I mean, you'll have some, of course, explosion and stuff, debris put up in the air, but it's not going to be like the equivalent of like if it hit the middle of the United States, a comet. You're not going to have that kind of level of dust and clouds going up. It's just landing in snow, essentially. Kind of like if you took a rock and threw it in the ground in like a dust patch, on the dirt, it'll kick up all that dust. But if you take it and throw it in like an ice bank, it just kind of plops in that ice bank. It doesn't really have a lot of kick up,
I guess it depends on the size of the asteroid, though. I think if the asteroid's big enough, it's gonna cause some sort of atmospheric issues. I kind of lean towards maybe there was some more geological volcanic activity that was heating things up around maybe in these ice caps or near these regions and caused flooding and maybe necessarily it wasn't an instant thing, even though it seems like in these stories, but maybe it took a while. Like it was an era of global warming.
So you think maybe like a giant volcano underneath, say, Greenland, melted a significant portion of the ice age ice caps, and that flooded the regions. That's kind of like the lines you're going with, you think?
I maybe not necessarily all these other regions we talked about, but I feel like that would be a source of maybe Mesoamerica for sure, especially with like the ice age occurring over there.
What do you think of the similarities in the stories, though, with the, a handful of people being told about something, building something, and then like a lot of the bird stuff?
Well, I think, in that case, that kind of leads credence to maybe there was one huge event, and that these different people had similar stories about certain groups of people that survived. So that makes it interesting right there, since they are so similar.
So, okay, so you're kind of leaning then more toward it happening to like a small population of one group surviving, and then those people spreading out and then repopulating all over the place and carrying that myth, or all these people in their different locations all experiencing similar thing. You think it's more
so
one
Mediterranean is like the cradle of civilization. They experienced one gigantic thing, but maybe like in Mesoamerica, it was different because different geological things occurred. I don't know. That's my idea on it.
Okay. Well, cool. What about China? Not to leave China out with there. Do you think they're tied in at all with these, or do you think that's a separate type of flood event?
They're communists. I don't care about them. So.
Well, they weren't back in the day.
No. I don't know. They're one. There's just it's different. It's interesting. Yeah, it seems like it's more like the flooding that we see in this background here, where it's that seems more like kind of the natural flooding that we hear about in modern times, and it just kind of kept going, and people were just kind of dealing with it, and it was a little different than it being a complete catastrophe or a extinction level event.
Okay. All right, very cool. I think maybe we differ a little bit on these flood myth ideas, although who's to say? I kind of like the Younger Dryas impact theory myself, or a solar flare, even not a solar flare, supernova, just far enough away but close enough to make some ice melt because it releases heat. Although when you get to these catastrophe stories from around the world, there are some interesting ones that kind of like line up. And of course, a lot of things have been, I guess, lost to history and kind of like borrowed. And that's another thing with these flood myths too. In some locations, you see, oh, well, these are clearly been influenced a little bit by, Christian missionaries or something that brought the story of Noah over. And they kind of melded it into their original flood myth stories, like saying like Hawaii has one that seems a little bit too like with names and stuff like that, kind of close to like that. So you kind of think, oh, they just kind of borrowed it, but there's still like a nugget of something that was there before on that. So, it's kind of interesting to me with the catastrophe type stories, not just with floods, but I think this kind of getting a little bit off track, and I might be misspeaking about it, but with some stories in the Bible, or like when the sun stood still for like 3 days. I think there was like a story about that in there at some point.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, I think it was what was it? I can't remember. I'm sure all the Bible scholars will let us know. But there's a corresponding story in Mesoamerica talking about how it was night for 3 days or whatever. So like that would make sense because it was on the opposite side of the world. So if the sun stood still for 3 days at this point on this side of the planet, then that means you should have some darkness stories on the other side of the planet. So I don't know why I'm saying this. Kind of to relate that the flood myths, if there was a global thing that happened, they would all experience something and relate it to how it relates to their culture at the time. And of course, with all those flooded cities and things like that, it makes sense that, hey, a flood water rose seemed like kind of quick at some point. But
And it definitely can't be disregarded with all these myths, though. Every one of them has a spiritual element to it. So, I mean, very much so, there could have been spiritual divinity interference that happened and was a big part of why these floods happened. So I feel like we've gone into like the scientific aspect of it or the possibilities, but I mean, that's one factor that is continuous in all these stories too. So, I mean, maybe we're trying to dive deep down in the science, but maybe there's something we just don't understand exactly that completely caused these events.
So I guess there's really three possibilities then, saying some natural event that happened, comet or geologic warming, whatever, some spiritual thing with the gods, God, whatever, or third one, aliens.
There are a lot of arcs going on that are sealing themselves up and saving people and can protect them from the elements.
Yeah, I could see aliens being like, all right, we hate you people because you're so loud and noisy. You're messing up our flow. We're gonna come down there and wipe you guys out. But you guys are cool. We'll tell you how to build an ark so you survive. And each one had their, maybe there's like a group of aliens and each one had their like little pet human projects. And they're like, well, we like these guys over here in Africa, but we like these guys over here in India and so on. So it's like, all right, we know kind of how to do it. It was like, just tell them build a boat and you'll have to seal it up and then they'll survive. I don't know.
Are there like, you're just saying like, hey, the civilization is growing, but we can see that this natural, maybe extinction level event is coming. We want to save them. So we're going to save pockets of them in these arcs or ships. And then once things settle down, Earthside, plot them back down, then we can watch them grow again. So,
oh yeah, maybe the arcs were alien spaceships saying.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I like that. Zane convinced me they're all aliens. Very good. But let's convince ourselves with a little drawing time, shall we? Today, I think let us just draw your version of an arc. I think that's fair. That should be pretty good. So yeah, let's do that. You ready?
Ready.
All right, let's get it going.
Where will they draw? We wonder. Will it be a house, a cat, or thunder? Oh no, the pictures suck, oh dear. But we cheer them on, the friends, let's hear. Josh is sketching something round. Zane's lines are all over town. Crayons flying, colors burst, but their art is the worst.
All right.
Okay.
I think we got that one pretty good. You want to go first?
Sure. Let's see. There we
There
go.
you go.
So kind of similar to what we were just talking about, but a little different. An
Okay.
actual wooden arc, but maybe there's a UFO tracking what's going on.
Oh, that's good. I like that. That's
Constantly
clever.
watching their reality TV of humans.
That's very good. I like that one, Zane. That was excellent. All right, so let's go with mine. All right, let's see. I draw them small. There you go. Yeah, you see.
All right.
I got the arc, and then that's me releasing a bird, and then I drew you up on the roof about to dive into the water.
You really do draw them small because it's the size of your thumbnail. I just don't understand how you do that.
I can draw small. It's quicker that way, you know.
To me, it would not be quicker that way. I need to just draw it big with big lines. But
I'm a professional, you know. I can draw very tiny.
Yeah, you are what some would call a professional. Yes,
I'm unprofessional.
Yeah,
an unprofessional artist. That's me. But yeah, that was fun. So
that was nice that you incorporated the birds.
Yeah, the birds. And you wanted to cool off because it was hot, so you dove into the water. You know, I didn't have time to draw the swimming trunks on you, but you know.
Yeah. free balling, going in.
I would say though, if you're trying to repopulate the Earth, putting 2 dudes on the same boat probably wouldn't help. So hopefully, there's another ship with our ladies on them somewhere else.
That was the one region where they didn't recover from the flood.
Antarctica.
They had 2 guys on the boat. That wasn't part of the plan.
Oh yeah, that's what happened to Atlantis. They weren't able to recover. Oh man!
But it was more modern, accepting way of doing it. But they
got
didn't
the rainbows. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Zane. Where can people find us?
All right, so just telltaleguys.com, and also you can find us on our YouTube channels as Telltale Guys, Facebook, all that, and then also you can email us at heyguys@telltaleguys.com.
Very nice.
What's up?
Said very nice. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, and obviously like us. It's good for the algorithms and all that. Comment on any of the socials that you're on. We'll comment back. And also submit ideas for any type of weird story, tales, myths, legends, lore. We'll talk about it. History. Well, obviously we have a lot of history in ours, but yeah, we would love to hear from you.
All right. Well, with that, I guess we'll say make sure you put your swim trunks on in case there's another global flood, and be prepared with some wood.
Always make sure you have umbrellas too.
Yes. All right. Later.
All right. Bye.
Telltale guys will whisper loud about floods that made us all so proud. From Noah's Ark to Mesopotamian tide, did it come from God or a natural ride? China's rivers surge with mighty roar. India's legends spoke of even more. Aliens grinning in the night so high. Who really sent the waters from the sky? Great deluge sweeping through our past. Questions rise like water so fast. God's hand and nature's wrath we seek. Mysteries of flood so ancient and bleak. Tablets crumble in our hands. Questions rise like water so fast. God's hand or nature's wrath we seek. Mysteries of flood so ancient and bleak. Ancient tablets crumble in our hands, carving stories of wet and weary land. Rivers rise and cover earth with might. What's the truth beneath the moon?